Hello, George. Mr. George Crowley from Australia. Are you able to hear me? Sarah from Singapore. Are you able to hear me? Sarah Shardville. Right, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. I'm able to see you and your mom. Sekejap. Kita dulu start. Sarah okey, pun Sarah ada. Sarah ada.
menggunakan pembesar suara komputer anda dalam nada senyap bagi mengelakkan gangguan sepanjang Siri Bicara ini berlangsung. Dan kepada warga USM yang mengikuti Siri Bicara ini, tuan-tuan perlu mengisi satu borang maklum balas di akhir sesi untuk mata CPD. Okay, sebarang soalan berkaitan tajuk bicara ini, tuan-tuan boleh bertanya kepada di ruangan chat dan kami akan sampaikan kepada Dr. Haslina untuk menjawabnya. Tuan-tuan juga boleh melayari pameran dalam talian yang pautan yang akan kami sertakan di ruangan chat. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin and I have a few housekeeping notes to make before we start our program today. I would like to seek your cooperation to mute your microphone in order to avoid any interruption. And to all USM staff and students, you are required to fill a feedback form in order to apply for a CPD point. The link will be provided in the end of the session. Okay, you may type any question regarding the talk in the chat area and we will pass the question to Dr. Haslina. You may serve the online exhibition about Hamilton in the link that we will provide in the chat box.
Right.
Selamat petang kepada semua penonton Siri Bicara Malaysiana yang pertama kali diadakan ini. Program ini dulu kali dianjurkan oleh bahagian Malaysiana dan Akib dan bahagian komunikasi korporat Perpustakaan Hamzah Tendul. Tajuk bicara pada hari ini ialah A.W. Hamilton and the Translation of English Nursery Rhymes into Malay, yang akan disampaikan oleh Prof. Madia Dr. Haslina Harun dari Unit Penyelidikan Terjemahan dan Interpretasi Pusat Majian Ilmu Kemanusiaan. Untuk maklumat semua, kita juga ada beberapa tetamu yang sangat istimewa. Mereka adalah keturunan A.W. Hamilton itu sendiri, iaitu Puan Sarah Khalid Shadlo dan juga ibunya, iaitu Puan Sharifah Fauziah binti Said Husin Alka. Mr. George Crowley dari Sydney, Australia, yang juga penyumbang buku Hadis Book of Malay Nursery Rhymes terbitan tahun 1939 kepada Malaysiana dan bahagian Malaysiana dan Akib Perpustakaan Hamzah Tendul. Dan juga kita ada Puan Zahra Osman, iaitu koresponden NST yang menetap di London. Okay, sebelum kita bermula, saya ingin memperkenalkan Dr. Haslina Harun sedikit maklumat tentang beliau. Dia merupakan Associate Professor. Prof. Haslina Harun is a lecturer at the School of Humanities. She teaches translation at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Her research interests include literary translation and translation history. Without wasting any more time, now I pass the mic to Dr. Haslina.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Yes, great. Thanks, Puan Radia. Right. Let me just start by sharing my screen. Second, let me share my screen. Right. Right, I hope you're able to see my screen now. Right. Right, I would first of all, let me just say that I am it's very heartwarming and also very encouraging to see. Just a second. We'd like to sort out a few things. Right. Let me just start by saying that it's very encouraging, it's very heartwarming to see the number of people who have tuned in, who have decided to join in this afternoon. I assume that you are here because you're interested in either A.W. Hamilton, or you're interested in translation, or you're interested in both. Whatever it is, welcome to the talk. I would also, first of all, like to thank the Malaysiana and Archive section of the Hamzah Sendut Library at USM for coming up with the idea of this talk, and also for inviting me to present my research. I also would like to extend a warm welcome to a few special people here. First of all, Miss Sarah Talib Shadlow and her mother, Puan Sharifah Fauzia Syed Hussein Al-Kaf, who are joining us from Singapore. Welcome. We are delighted, we are honored to have you with us. Second, we are also extremely delighted to have with us Mr. and Mrs. Crowley from Sydney, Australia. George and Carol Crowley, who are joining us from Sydney, Australia. George is instrumental in this study because it was his comment on a blog post in 2014 which really started the ball rolling. So George, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us. I also would like to welcome Puan Zahara Othman, who is joining us from London. Yes, so I'll be talking about A.W. Hamilton and his translation of English nursery rhymes into Malay. Okay, by way of introduction, this is the outline of my talk. I'll start with a bit of introduction, and then I will talk a bit about Haji's book of Malay nursery rhymes, and those which are housed at the Malaysiana and Archive collection of Pustakaan Hamzah Sendut USM. And then I'll talk about the translation of Hamilton's translation of nursery rhymes into Malay, and then I will talk about the translator behind the translations, and we will conclude after that. Okay, by way of introduction, let me just say that I work in the field of translation, and therefore being in this field, you can't help but be fascinated by translations, whatever language they are in. You can't help but be fascinated by translations, and you can't help but be fascinated by translators for carrying meanings across languages, and in the process adding new elements to the translation, taking out things from the translation, modifying them and adjusting them as they see fit, so as to make the translation suitable for their target readers. Let us go now to, so today we are going to be looking at how one translator carried meaning from English into Malay, bearing in mind that he learned Malay only when he came to the Malay Peninsula in 1908. Okay, so first of all, we're going to look at Haji's book of Malay nursery rhymes, which are housed here at USM. Right. There are 5 translations. Hamilton's nursery rhymes have been published a total of 5 times. The first publication was 1923 in Singapore by the Methodist Publishing House with the title Malay Nursery Rhymes. The second one was published in 1939, also in Singapore, but this time by Printers Limited. You will notice that the second publication has a title that's slightly different from the title of the first publication, and I'm sure that the title, the inclusion of the word Haji in the title raises a lot of questions. Who is Haji? Why is the name Haji there? Right. The third publication was in the year 1947. Now this is the only one out of the 5 publications which was published in Australia, and this was published by the Australasian Publishing Company in 1947. The next one was in 1956, and this one was published by Donald Moore in Singapore, and the final publication was in 1985. This one was also published in Singapore by Times Book International and bears the title Haji's Book of Favorite Nursery Rhymes. So the title has changed a bit compared to the previous 3 translations. Okay, right. Now, these 3 translations, the 1923 publication, 1939, and 1956 publication, are all here at USM Library, Perpustakaan Hamzah Senduk USM. The first and the third book, I am not very sure of how USM acquired these books, but I do know how the 1939 book reached USM, and I believe it is appropriate for me to talk a bit about how this book got here. Now, I came across this blog post in December 2017. So this was about 3 years ago. So in December 2017, I was just sitting around and surfing the net when I came across this blog post. This blog post was, if you notice, is dated February 11, 2014, and it is written by a writer by the name of Susan Abraham, who wrote about Haji's Book of Malay Nursery Rhymes, specifically the 1956 publication, which she found at Kino KL. Okay, so if you can see here, it set her back RM 690, yeah, and notice also at the very bottom here, she also mentioned how little she knows A.W. Hamilton. There's not much that she knows about A.W. Hamilton, and again, notice the blog post is dated February 11th, 2014. Okay, so she described the book a bit in her blog post. I'm sure that if you're interested, you would still be able to find the blog post there using the link at the bottom here. Right, and at the very end of this blog post was a comment by one George Crowley, and George Crowley is in the audience joining us from Sydney, Australia. So George wrote on May 7th, 2014, I also stumbled across Susan's blog, and he referred to Hamilton, A.W. Hamilton, as Uncle Haji. Uncle Haji, as I called him, was a great friend of my parents, Kevin and Gwen Crowley, who lived in Sydney, right? And a bit of history there, how Hamilton is related to the family through a friend of the parents. And also George Crowley noted here that Haji was very generous at Christmas time, and Haji and A.W. Hamilton, whom George Crowley refers to as his Uncle Haji, actually gave Crowley a book of nursery rhymes with the inscription "Happy Birthday to George from Haji, Sydney, 19 December 1941. Now this book was given, I only found out later, this book was given to George by Hamilton on his 4th birthday. So in 1941, George Crowley was 4 years old when he received this book from A.W. Hamilton. And George also provided a very interesting story here. I clearly remembered one day in 1942 when the Japanese submarines shelled Sydney's eastern suburbs. Our garage was the official air raid shelter for our area. Haji ran into my bedroom and scooped me up all the time, telling me what an exciting adventure we were having as he ran for the shelter. I knew I was safe because I was with Uncle Haji. I hope these few memories of a man I only knew as a child add a little to his memory. And at the very end of this blog post, George provided his address in Sydney. Remember, I found this blog post in 2017, and the post was written in 2014. So, a period of 3 years had passed. There was an address, and this was perhaps the only person who knew about Hamilton. So I thought it would be a good idea, crazy, though it sounds a bit crazy, I thought it would be a good idea, a great idea in fact, to write to George and ask him about A.W. Hamilton. There were several things that crossed my mind. 3 years had passed. I wasn't sure if George was still around, if George was still living at the same address, and taking into account the fact that it was December, I knew that if I wrote a letter and sent it to Australia, I thought that perhaps the letter would get lost in the post. I wasn't very optimistic. I was pretty sure the letter would get lost in the post. And but somehow I still wrote the letter. George reminded me yesterday that I wrote the letter on December 11th, 2017. And so I sent the letter, not knowing whether it would reach George, not knowing whether it would reach its destination, and whether I would be able to find more information about A.W. Hamilton. It was a long shot, I thought, but I thought it was worth it. And after all, I had nothing to lose. So I sent that letter off and did not think much about it. And on 3rd January 2018, I received an email from one George Crowley who said, "Selamat Penang Haslina, your letter has just arrived. I'm very excited to know that you are researching my Uncle Haji." Again, that reference to his Uncle Haji. "It will take me some time to respond, but unfortunately I'm unsure of the answers to the question you asked, but I will be able to give you some information while he was in Sydney around 1942. I was 4 years old at that time, so George is 82 now. Please bear with me and you will hear from me in greater detail in the near future." So that was the first email that George sent me, and of course that was followed by several more emails over a period of a few months, and we were corresponding. Emails were going forth between Malaysia and Australia, and the name George Crowley became a permanent, a name that was mentioned often in our household. So family members would ask, "Did George send an email? Have you received any email from George? How's George doing?" and so on. So we talked about George a lot in our household. And at some point, while we were corresponding through email, George brought up the idea of finding a home for the books by Hamilton. And he suggested to me, he asked me whether the USM library would be interested in the books. And I, of course, immediately approached the library, specifically Puan Radia Banu, who is also here joining us from Kelantan, and also people from the Malaysiana and archive section of the library. And after a bit of discussion, I'll cut the long story short, the library agreed to receive the books, and one good news that came after that was when George told me that his wife Carol and son Brooke would be coming to Penang in August 2018, and they would be delighted to bring the books over, to hand them over to the library. And of course that was wonderful news. George does not travel anymore, but we were happy nevertheless to host Carol and Brooke while they were in Penang. So in August 2018, Carol and Brooke arrived in Penang, and on 8th August the books that George sent to Carol arrived, and I thank you, George, for granting me permission to share this letter with the audience today. And this is what George wrote. Dear Haslina, who would have thought that when you wrote to me last December that we would still be corresponding 8 months later? That we have a shared interest in a fascinating person is quite a wonderful thing. Haji would be proud. In many ways, I am glad that these books are finding a permanent home in the country of their origin. Not quite, the books were published in Singapore, but near enough. However, it is difficult parting with them, as in a way, I am parting with a little bit of my life, which I find very sad. The fact that each carries a short note from Haji possibly makes them unique. Definitely. The most important thing to me is that the books are going to be looked after. Being realistic, it is understandable that they are, to our small family, relics of a distant past, which means I can't be sure of the future. Carol will give you 2 parcels. The small one is a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I am blocking the Rubaiyat, I'm sorry. Let me just go over there. Okay, this is the copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, also translated by A.W. Hamilton, which George received from his mother and which is now in my possession. Haji addressed this book to Gwen, mother of George. This is especially precious to me and I want you to have it. So George, the book is here with me today, and I can assure you that the book is safe with me. It's kept under lock and key at home, so you did not worry. Okay, so I'm sure Mom would agree with my decision. I know you will look after it, inshallah. I will look after it. It's with me, safe and sound. Okay, so this is the Rubaiyat, and in the book is an inscription, Gwen, from Haji, Sydney, Christmas 1941. And for those of you who do not know, the Rubaiyat was translated, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam was originally written in Persian. It was translated in 1859 by Edward Fitzgerald from Persian into English, and in 1935 A.W. Hamilton translated the Rubaiyat from English into Malay. Right. This was one of the parcels. The other parcel was, of course, Haji's book of Malayan nursery rhymes, which George received as a birthday present from A.W. Hamilton in 1941 when he was 4 years old. So this was when librarians from the Malaysiana and Archive section went to the E&O Hotel to meet up with Carol and Brooke and to receive the books sent by George. So we have one Radia here talking to Carol, and the rest of the staff of the librarians from the Malaysiana and Archive division receiving the book from Carol and Brooke. Right. Remember the inscription which George mentioned in his blog post. I would like to share with you the actual book here, and also the inscription, Happy Birthday to George from Haji. And the book, we now have this book in our library, and inshallah we will take good care of it. Right. So that is the history of how the 1939 book, Haji's Book of Malayan Nursery Rhymes, got to USM. And for those who are interested to do a research on that, you're most welcome to come to USM to look at it. Now, I will go next to the translation of the nursery rhymes itself. Okay, so I mentioned earlier the 5 different publications. We will start first of all with the 1923 book, 1923 publication. Right, so the title is Malayan Nursery Rhymes by A.W. Hamilton. The cover features a Malay girl in Malay because she's wearing sarung and perhaps a baju kurung. Her hair tied up in a bun with anklets at her feet. And the title is just Malayan Nursery Rhymes by A.W. Hamilton, printed at Methodist Publishing House, Singapore. It does not come with a date, but through research we are able to determine the actual date of the publication, which is 1923. Now, I found this newspaper article from the National Library of Singapore. It's dated 19 September 1923, and this was when Hamilton's Book of Malayan Nursery Rhymes was published. And if you notice here, it says we have received from the Methodist Publishing House a copy of Mr. A.W. Hamilton's Malayan Nursery Rhymes, which is just out of the press. So yes, so it was published in 1923. This is the second edition, and this is the surprising part because it says here that this is the second edition. To my knowledge, this is the first edition. Okay, but it says that this is the second edition and is considerably larger and is an improvement on the old edition. But then later we found out, this is from the preface of the 1939 publication, there's a reason why it's said that this is the second edition. It was because the first edition was published in pamphlet form at the time of the Malaya-Borneo exhibition in 1922. Now this exhibition was held, the Malaya-Borneo exhibition of 1922 was held in conjunction with the visit of the Prince of Wales, Prince Edward of Wales, later the Duke of Sussex, first King Edward VIII and later on the Duke of Sussex. His visit to Singapore in 1922. So this Malaya-Borneo exhibition was held in conjunction with his visit. So the first edition was in the form of a pamphlet. I'm not sure whether the pamphlet is still around. I was in Singapore in February of this year before COVID struck and tried to find the pamphlets, but I could only find a guidebook without the pamphlets. So what we have is only the 1923 publication, which we also have here at USM. Okay, so the 1923 publication is issued in cardboard cover with the added attraction of a few simple drawings. Okay, it says here, we have a preface here by A.W. Hamilton. An attempt has been made in this booklet to translate into Malay some of the better known English nursery rhymes in their original meter while preserving the spirit of the Malay language and its idioms. So we will have a look shortly at how Hamilton dealt with some of the translations. Okay, so this is the content of the 1923 publication. You will notice that there are titles in English. Okay, this is actually a monolingual book. The translations are in Malay, but the translations in Malay do not come with titles in Malay. They are accompanied by the titles in English. So you've got the English title and the translation in Malay. So that's why the index has only the titles in English. Okay, but the translations are in Malay. Okay, so there are a total of 51 nursery rhymes. Okay, let's look at some of the nursery rhymes so that you can get an idea of how they are translated. Okay, the first one is "Where are you going to, my pretty maid?" And of course, for us to appreciate translations, translation into Malay, it would be good if we also know the English, then we can see what happens in the process of translation. So I've attached here the English original nursery rhyme for the benefit of those who do not know. Mau pergi mana, cantiklah sayang, mau ambil susu tuan, dia bilang. Where are you going, my pretty maid? I'm going a-milking, sir, she said. May I go with you, my pretty maid? You're kindly welcome, sir, she said. Bolehkah sama, cantiklah sayang, jikalau suka tuan, dia bilang. So you notice immediately the rhyme in the original English made and said throughout the nursery rhyme, and likewise Hamilton has tried to retain the rhyme, sayang and bilang, right? So rhyme, the rhyming element, he tried to retain in his translation. Let's look at different translations. Simple Simon. I'm sure that many of us are familiar with this nursery rhyme. Simple Simon met a pieman. Simple Simon met a pieman going to the fair. Said Simple Simon to the pieman, let me taste your ware. Said the pieman to Simple Simon, show me first your money. Said Simple Simon to the pieman, indeed I have not any. You will notice also that Simple Simon becomes in Malay putih, right? So pie, pieman, pie becomes roti, right? So a bit of domestication there, a term that we normally use in the field of translation studies to refer to adaptations carried out by the translator to make his text more reader friendly to his target readers, right? And you notice also the illustrations before of the Malay girl, and now you have what appears to be an Indian man and a Malay boy with the songkok and the baju Melayu, right? Another nursery rhyme, another example, Jack and Jill and Little Jack Horner. Jack and Jill, I'm sure many of us are familiar with Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill, Jack becomes B, Jill becomes Akik. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. B dan Akik, Panjat Bukit. The rhyming is still there. Jack and Jill went up the hill. So I have a feeling that the name Akik here is chosen because Hamilton wanted something that rhymed with Bukit, which is the translation for hill. Jack and Jill went up the hill. So Panjat Bukit, so there must be a name that rhymes with Bukit. Next we have Little Jack Horner becomes Anak Mat Kapur. I'm not sure why it becomes Anak Mat Kapur, but again domestication there. Anak Mat Kapur duduk di dapur. Little Jack Horner sat in a corner eating his Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and pulled out a plum and said, what a good boy am I. Anak Mat Kapur duduk di dapur makan sebiji papaya. So Christmas pie is domesticated and becomes papaya from something savory. It turns into a fruit. Dikorek semata kemudian kata tengok kepandaian saya. The rhyming is still there, and there's domestication in the process of it being translated from English into Malay. Another one, Taffy was a Welshman. So we've got the Malay girl, we've got the Malay boy, we've got the Indian man, and we also have the Chinese man. This is from Taffy was a Welshman. So Taffy is domesticated and becomes Ahfi. Taffy was a Welshman, and the Welshman in Malay becomes orang Cina, Chinese man. Taffy was a Welshman. Taffy was a thief. Taffy came to my house and stole a piece of beef. So again, domestication. Beef is translated into nasi, right? Right. So a bit that's the 1923 publication. We go now to the 1939 publication, which is even more interesting. Right. The 1939 publication, if you put it side by side with the 1923 publication, you'll notice immediately the title is different, the cover is different. Okay, and this is the first time that the nursery rhyme carries the title Haji. Okay, and you might be wondering at this point why Haji. Of course, we've also already seen from George Crowley's note in the blog post that Haji is actually Haji Hamilton, right? Why, how he acquired this name, we will come to that later, right? So the title is different, the illustration on the front cover is different. You will notice also that there is a mosque in the background, and to many people you would probably say that this is just a mosque that you would see anywhere, but you notice the two minarets, the four smaller minarets, the large dome and the small dome, and this mosque looks very much like the Ubudiyah Mosque in Kuala Kangsar. So probably Hamilton was there, or the illustrator Nora Hamilton was there, we don't know, right? But it is based on an actual mosque from my point of view at least, right? Right, this is the newspaper clipping from when the book was published in 1940. The newspaper clipping is dated 27th January 1940, and this is an enlarged date. This is a collection of nursery rhymes. The collection of nursery rhymes comprises 100 of the old children's favorites, favorite nursery rhymes, children's favorite nursery rhymes. So you can see immediately when compared to the 1923 publication, this has 100 nursery rhymes, translation of nursery rhymes, compared to 51, only 51 in the 1923 publication. So there are a lot more nursery rhymes in this 1939 publication, right? So this is a comparison of the content page. So the 1923 publication has 51 nursery rhymes, and the 1939 publication has 100 nursery rhymes. And in the process, I mentioned earlier that there are 51 nursery rhymes in the 1923 publication. Now, out of these 51 nursery rhymes in the 1923 publication, only 48 are included in the 1939 publication, which means that 3 were dropped and a few more are added, right? And what are the 3 which are dropped? I'm just highlighting them here because I have no idea why they were dropped. They appear to be interesting, but they were definitely dropped and did not make the cut. Okay, so these are the 3 nursery rhymes which did not make it. Willie in the Best of Sashes, Robin and Richard, and There Was a Man of Our Town. I'm also highlighting the nursery rhymes because I think they were translated in, the way they were translated is just brilliant. Okay, we start first with Robin and Richard, and again I have to stress that for us to appreciate the translation in Malay, you also have to know the original in English. So let's start with the English nursery rhyme. Robin and Richard were 2 pretty men. They lay in bed till the clock struck 10. Then up starts Robin and looks at the sky. Oh, brother Richard, the sun's very high. You go before with the bottle and bag, and I will come after on little Jack Nag. Little Jack Nag. Jack Nag here refers to a horse. Okay, so you've got Robin and Richard and Jack Nag horse. Okay, and this is the translation. Robin and Richard were 2 pretty men. Vera Sani, Vera Mutu, 2 orang cantik Hindu. Tengah hari pukul 1, baru bangun cari kutu. Kacang putih sama tuak Vera Sani dulu bawa. Habis itu Vera Mutu ikut dengan kereta rindu. You can see immediately, again, it is domesticated. So Robin becomes Vera Sani, Richard becomes Vera Mutu, and suddenly they are Indian men with the things which are normally associated with Indians, kacang putih, tuak, and also notice that the horse is turned into a bullock cart, kereta lembu. Interesting, I thought, right? We go on to the next one. There was a man of our town. There was a man of our town. and he was wondrous wise. He jumped into a bramble bush and scratched out both his eyes. So here we have town, and then it's changed. You have a more specific name, Pulau Pinang. It's just town in the original English. And then you've got a bramble bush, which is generalized into Duri. This is a general name which is specified as Pulau Pinang, and here we have something the opposite. Something which is specific is translated into something general. Here, something general is translated into something specific. So we've got the opposite here, right? He jumped into another bush and scratched them in again. Masuk lagi sekali, mata dapat pulang. So this one was not included in the 1939 publication. And the last one is Willie in the Best of Sashes. So we've got Willie in the Best of Sashes fell in the fire and burned to ashes. And by the room grew chilly, but no one liked to poke up Willie. So Willie becomes awang, the sash becomes sarung. Right? Awang pakai sarung baru, jatuh api jadi abu. Bila panas sudah kurang, orang tak mau korek awang. Which I think is brilliant. The rhyme, the way that it's domesticated to appeal to the target readers. I think it's a brilliant translation. Now let's look at what Hamilton had to say in his preface about his translation. Okay, so these are some of the things he said. First of all, in English, there are a number of nursery rhymes which are interesting and cause delight to children. So he has included 100 of these rhymes. He said nothing about the previous publication, how many were included, how many were dropped, how many new nursery rhymes are there in this new publication. None of that was mentioned by Hamilton. Okay, so you would only know this if you do a comparison between the 99 publication and also the 1923 publication. Okay, next, he talked about, let me move on the way. He talked about what is included in the book. So at the end of the book, there is also a glossary yang mengandung segala percakapan Melayu yang digunakan dalam pantun dengan ertinya dalam bahasa Inggeris. So he has a glossary at the end with words in Malay which he used in the nursery rhyme, and these are accompanied by their meanings in English. So you know, if you are targeting a Malay readership, you would not need to provide the meanings in English. So it's clear here that Hamilton was not just targeting a Malay readership, but anyone who enjoys reading nursery rhymes. And he mentions this, kerana dicadangkan buku ini akan dibaca oleh anak segala bangsa yang ada di tanah Melayu, bukan sahaja oleh anak orang Melayu. He wants everyone to read this, not just Malay children. Right? Right, next, we have his translation strategy. Nama orang atau tempat sudah ditukar belaka, dan kadang-kadang nama benda yang pelik pun diganti dengan nama benda yang orang biasa tengok di negeri bawah angin. So he mentioned his translation strategy there, domesticating, changing to suit his target readers, right? And then he also talks about the rhyming aspect. Nursery rhymes, they rely on rhymes to appeal to children. Oleh sebab itu dan kerana hendak mencari sajak, ada kalanya tujuan pantun itu pun berubah, which means that at times he wanted to retain the rhyming aspect of the nursery rhymes, and as a result of that, he had to change the storyline. He had to change the way things proceed in the nursery rhyme. How the content of the nursery rhymes had to be changed because he wanted to retain the rhyme, right? This is one nursery rhyme. Okay, ini mini mini mo is translated into ini mini minah mari. So mina becomes mini, mina mini, and you got mina mina, and you've got nigger is translated into habshi, right? And you notice also that these appear to be Chinese, okay, based on the clothing. Okay, and we also got the Indians. The Indians are also represented. We've got the Chinese, and then we've got the Indians. And notice also that the 1939 publication is a bilingual publication compared to the 1923 publication that was monolingual. It was only in Malay with titles in English. But this 1939 publication is a bilingual one. So you've got the nursery rhymes in English first, followed by the translation in Malay. You've got the titles in English, and you also have the title in Malay. And you have many more illustrations. And the illustrations which are used in the illustrations which are used in the 1939 publication are not the same as the illustrations which are used in the 1923 publication. So it appears that different people did the illustrations. And then you also have the Baba and Nyonya. They are also represented in Hamilton's nursery rhyme. This is the nursery rhyme which accompanies I Love Little Pussy, Saya Sayangkan Kucing, right? And you also got the Malays. The Malays are also represented. So you've got the Chinese, you've got the Indians, you've got the Baba Nyonya, and you also have the Malays. And this is the illustration which accompanies the nursery rhyme. Here we go around the mulberry bush, which is translated into Marilah Pusing Pokok Pisang, which is terribly amusing, I would say, right? Right, remember I gave the example of Taffy was a Welshman earlier from the 1923 publication. Now it appears that Hamilton has made some changes to his translation. It's only when we compare the two translations that we know that changes have been made. So Taffy was a Welshman, Taffy was a thief, Taffy came to my house and stole a piece of beef. So in the 23 publication, it was Afi masuk rumah curi mangkuk nasi. In 1939, the translation appears to be closer to the original. Afi orang Cina, Afi pandai curi, Afi datang rumah dan curi daging babi. Taffy was a Welshman, Taffy was a thief. Taffy came to my house and stole a piece of beef. So it appears that the 1939 publication is much closer to the original English. Why the changes were made, we are not sure. Hamilton does not explain in his preface, and we are not sure why the changes are made. In fact, most of the nursery rhymes are changed. Some minor, but with some nursery rhymes there are quite major changes. This is from Jack and Jill, which I also mentioned earlier. So on the left-hand side is Jack and Jill from the 1923 publication. B dan Akid panjat bukit ambil air setuh, Akid jatuh, patah tengkuk, B pun ikut terjun. So in the 1939 publication, it's longer, and there are changes if you can see here. B dan Akid panjat bukit, mau ambil air setuh, Akid pijak salah. Here is Akid jatuh, Akid pijak salah, pecah kepala, B ikut jatuh turun, and slightly longer. Perhaps he was referring to Jack and Jill, but a longer version of Jack and Jill. Now, this is especially interesting for so many reasons. In the 1923 publication, the nursery rhyme Oranges and Lemons, Orange and lemons hit the bells of St. Clements, you owe me 5 farthings, hit the bells of St. Martin's, and so on. Some of us would probably be familiar with this. And notice that the names of places in the original nursery rhymes, you've got names of bells in churches which are located around London. So you've got St. Martin's, Shoreditch, and so on. Here, the names have been domesticated into Tanjung, Pinang, Parit. We've got Kelantan, we've got Gemas, probably Layang-Layang, Lelayang, Aceh, we even go way to Indonesia, Karang, Segambut, Papan, Cemor, right? And this is the 1923 publication. And in the 1939 publication, it seems like Hamilton has completely redone the translation and he comes up with a longer translation. One, the translation is definitely longer. Number two, notice also the names, and for us who are attached to USM in Penang, the names are definitely relevant because these are all names of places in Penang. So you've got Pulau Pinang, you've got Tanjung, Sungai Pinang, you've got Kampung Kling, you've got Padang Kota, and so on. Bayan Lepas, Pucat Muka, Padang Kuda, Simpang Empat, Kelawai Kramat, and so on. So number one, the nursery rhyme is longer than the 1923 publication, and then the names of places have been changed. And also what is interesting is that Hamilton has also included Tamil words. You notice here the word Ponu, the word Maple, and also the word Malay, Bunga Malay or Bunga Malay, okay, which are all from Indian, Indian words which are incorporated into his nursery rhyme. So you will see later why Penang is important in Hamilton's nursery rhyme. Hamilton spent 5 years in Penang, and he even wrote an article about the Malay language as it is used in Penang. So Penang, I believe, has a special place in Hamilton's heart. So that was why he included names of places and included Tamil words, Indian words in his nursery rhyme. Even compared to the 1923 version, it looks like a different translation altogether. Right? So this is from the 1939 preface. Hamilton says, Tuan Pengarang pun boleh dikatakan anak Teluk Belanga. He is the son of Teluk Belanga. He is the son of Singapore. That was where he first learned Malay, and boleh dikatakan anak Teluk Belanga dan Tanjung Penang, because Penang he spent 5 years in Penang. So I believe that was why he includes a lot of place names in his translation. Right. We now go on to the 1947 translation. The 1947 translation was published in Australia, and it's not very much different in terms of content from the 1939 publication. It was published in Australia, the Australasian Publishing Company. In terms of content, it's very much similar. It's very much similar to the 1939 publication. There are 100 nursery rhymes. The illustrations are the same. The content is the same. There are minor changes in terms of spelling, but that's about it. Okay, so this is the 1947 publication, which I found at Perpustakaan Negara Malaysia, Koleksi Nadir, Rare Collections at the National Library in Kuala Lumpur. So anyone who's interested can go and have a look at this 1947 publication. So again, this 1947 publication also has 100 nursery rhymes, the same nursery rhymes as the 1939 publication. Very little change made in terms of content, right? And also illustration, right? Yeah, we go on next to the 1956 publication, which was published by Donald Moore in Singapore. Again, this 1956 publication is also very similar to the 1947 and 1939 publication in terms of its content. Very little changes in it, just minor changes in terms of spelling, right? And it's still a bilingual publication. So you've got The Crooked Man translated into Orang Tua Bongkok, right? So bilingual. The 1939, 1947, and 1956 publications are all bilingual publications. Okay, and finally we go to the 1985 nursery rhymes published in Singapore by Times Book International. Right. So there are references to the 1939, 1947, 1956, and then it was reprinted in 1963, the same one which was published in 1956, and this one is 1985, the latest one. And I have, if you can see, I also have the 1985 nursery rhyme, which I got from Singapore, and I acknowledge, I would like to say thank you to my student in Singapore, Mr. Vincent Uy, who helped me, assisted me in trying to get this copy from Singapore from a seller who wanted to throw away his books which he feels are of no longer of use to him. So he wanted to throw the book away. He wasn't going to use it, and I found it and decided to buy it. So Vincent Uy in Singapore, thank you very much for getting this book for me. Now you will notice immediately that the title has changed, and it's understandable why. So Haji's Book of Malay Nursery Rhymes is now Haji's Book of Favorite Nursery Rhymes. You will probably notice also that the mosque has changed. So if you're familiar with Singapore, you will notice that what I think is Masjid Ubudiyah in the background has now changed into Masjid Sultan in Singapore, right? Now, in terms of content, this is a comparison between the 1956 translation published in Singapore and the 1985 publication published in Singapore. Afi and the daging babi has changed into daging babiri. So Afi is still Chinese. Afi orang Cina, Afi pandai menyanyi. Afi datang rumah dan curi daging babiri. So from babi is changed into babiri. And I'm sure that Hamilton did not do the change because Hamilton passed away in 1967. So this was published in 1985. So it was probably the decision of the publisher. So I was curious. So what happened to all the references to babi and daging babi? So it appears that all the nursery rhymes which have references to daging babi, they're all changed into daging babiri. So another example. This is from Tom Tom the Piper's Son. Tom is changed into Ali. Tom Tom the Piper's son stole a pig and away he ran. The pig was eat and Tom was beat and Tom went crying down the street. So Tom becomes Ali and stole a pig. 1956 is curi babi. In 1985 is curi babiri. The pig was eat and Tom was beat. So babiri, babi into babiri. Again, another example. To market, to buy a fat pig. Home again, jiggity jig. To market, to buy a fat hog. Home again, jiggity jog. Ke pasar, membeli babi. That is the 1956 translation. In 1985, babi again is changed into babiri. Okay. And another example. Ini anak babi pergi pasar. This little pig went to the market. So this is from the nursery rhyme. This little pig went to the market. So again, babi is changed into babiri. Notice also that some other words have also changed in terms of spelling. Duduk, the spelling have changed. The spelling has changed. Cuma, and then the sound produced by the animal has also changed because of the change in the animal. So you've got the babi, wee, babiri, back, right? Right. This is the newspaper article which I found dated 13 December 1985, also from National Library of Singapore. So dendang kegemaran kanak-kanak, Haji's Book of Favorite Nursery Rhymes, mengandungi 100 buah dendang kegemaran kanak-kanak dalam bahasa Inggeris dan bahasa Melayu yang berbagai rupa untuk menghiburkan hati bukan sahaja kanak-kanak, malah orang dewasa juga. And a short example, a brief example of a nursery rhyme. So you've got the Marilah pusing pokok pisang. Okay, the translation of Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush in this newspaper article. Right. The person who wrote this, this is the actual newspaper article. This newspaper article is actually a bilingual newspaper article. So it has the English article and also the Malay article together on the same page, right? So the title of the English article is O Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and O Bulan O Bintang Mari Pucukkan Ara. Okay, so the person who wrote this is Tumina Sapawi from Singapore, and she asked in English, in the English article, she asked, one wonders why the book is titled Haji's Book of Favorite Nursery Rhymes. Could Haji be a mark of his credentials among the Malays? Or could it mark his conversion to Islam, having spent part of his lifetime in Malaya? And in Malay, she asked, kenapa pula buku ini mempunyai judul Haji? Adakah setakat gelaran mendiang Hamilton di kalangan orang Melayu, atau mungkinkah beliau telah memeluk agama Islam dan naik haji? I'm sure that this is the same question that we have, and we're about to answer that. Okay, so this is perhaps a good point to go on to the next section, which is the translator A.W. Hamilton, right? Right, you notice the 1939 publication has the title Haji's Book of Malay Nursery Rhymes. So the word Haji is on the title of the book. Hamilton refers to himself, calls himself Haji, as evident from this inscription in the book which he gave George. Okay, so the name Haji, the title Haji, is on the title of the book. He calls himself Haji. Other people also call himself Haji. This is the book Sang Lomri, which a Malay book translated from Reynard the Fox by A.W. Hamilton. It was, I think, initially published by Pejabat Karang Mengarang in Jawi. So we have the Rumi version here, also by A.W. Hamilton. And notice on the blurb, susunan bahasa Melayu cara biasa dari Tuan Hamilton lebih terkenal Haji. So people know, so people refer to him as, people know that he is well known as with the name Haji, right? The honorific Haji, right? And here, Gerard Hawkins, when he was writing in March 1957, he wrote, of the late Sir Hugh Clifford and Haji Hamilton, it has been said that they were the only two Europeans whose Malay was quite indistinguishable from the language spoken by a Malay. Can people who are here, can you please mute your mic, because it seems to be causing interruption. I would appreciate very much if you could turn off your microphone. Thank you very much. Yes. So this is what Gerard Hawkins had to say about Hamilton. There were only two people who spoke Malay very fluently. One was Sir Hugh Clifford and the other was Haji Hamilton. So Russell Jones, writing in 1984, listed A.W. Hamilton as one of the more prominent Malay British scholars in the Malay Peninsula, and he also said that he seems to have been one of those people who have an extraordinary capacity to identify themselves with the community they are in. But most of all, it was his outstanding fluency in Malay which made his reputation and earned him the sobriquet Haji. So, according to Russell Jones, Haji got the honorific title Haji because he was fluent in Malay, right? It would probably be interesting, a bit of interesting information here. Hamilton was in the Malayan police, which he joined in 1908 when he arrived in Singapore, and it was evidently his knowledge of Malay which led to his being given the task in 1915 of suppressing the Tok Janggut uprising in Kelantan. If you remember, 1915, the rebellion of Tok Janggut in 1915, Hamilton, because of his fluency in the Malay language, was sent to Kelantan to help deal with this situation. right? So according to Russell Jones, according to Gerald Hawkins, and according to a tribute to Hamilton which appeared in the Malay Police magazine in 1956, the author, which we do not know, he wrote that Mr. Hamilton's knowledge of Malay and Hokkien was exceptional, and he must have been one of the most talented linguists to have served in the Malayan police. So a number of people are of the opinion that that was how Hamilton acquired the honorific Haji, because of his fluency in the Malay language. Now, while it is quite probable that Hamilton's command of the Malay language have had some bearing on his acquisition of the honorific title Haji, there is also another widespread belief as to how he got this title. Now, we all know that the title Haji is commonly used by a Muslim male who has successfully completed the Hajj, or the Muslim pilgrimage to Mecca. And from the 1920s, matters relating to Muslim pilgrimage to Mecca in the Malay states were administered by an office which was under the direction of the Political Intelligence Bureau of the Police Department of the Malay states. And I gratefully acknowledge the assistance given by Dr. Aiza Maslan from the School of Humanities, whose own research area is Hajj under the British colonial rule and also in more recent times. So thank you, Dr. Aiza, for sharing the book with me and for showing me the direction where Hamilton is concerned. Okay, so this is the book that Dr. Aiza Maslan shared with me. This book is titled The British Empire and the Hajj, 1865 to 1956. And it is written by Dr. John Slight, who is currently lecturer in Imperial and Global History in London. And he wrote here that A.W. Hamilton, Director of the Political and Intelligence Bureau and Protector of Pilgrims, travelled on a ship with just under 1,000 pilgrims to Jeddah in 1927. So Hamilton was on the Kapal Haji, or the pilgrim ship to Jeddah, to report on the pilgrimage, right? And he recommended that the Malay pilgrim officer should be permanently based in Hijaz, a move supported by the British consul, especially because many Malays remain in Mecca to study. What is important here is that it seems likely, according to John Slight, that Hamilton's experiences with pilgrims played a role in his subsequent conversion to Islam, and he performed the Hajj. Known as Haji Hamilton in Malaya, he remained a police officer until his retirement in 1930. And of course, I was very happy to get this information because it kind of like solved the mystery of the word Haji. So according to John Slight, he went on this pilgrim ship to Jeddah in 1927. He converted to Islam, he performed the Hajj, and therefore he became a Haji. I was very happy with this explanation, and at the same time, I found, it was about the same time that I discovered two files at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, files about Hamilton. So I thought, why not go to London and look at these files. It would be a shame not to look at these files and look at the content of the files. So before that, did Hamilton actually go on the pilgrim ship to Mecca? This is what I found at the National Archive of Malaysia. Hamilton did actually go, or he was on that pilgrim ship to Mecca. He was there because he was entrusted with the task of reporting the conditions of pilgrims on the ship. And this is a 5-page document which I found at the National Archive of Malaysia. So this is report is dated 9th May of 1927, written from Jeddah, and Hamilton writes, He wrote, I have the honor to report that in accordance with the permission granted in correspondence and so on and so on. So this I proceeded to Jeddah from Singapore by the pilgrim ship, steamship Philoptids belonging to the ocean steamship Blue Funnel, which left at 4:30 p.m. on the 21st April 1927, carrying 959 pilgrims. So Hamilton was on that ship. So in his report, so here, number 2, we have, he mentions the vessel arrived at Kamaran Island. Kamaran Island is an island off the coast of Yemen, and Kamaran Island has a quarantine station for pilgrims before they move on to Jeddah. So the vessel arrived at Kamaran Island quarantine station at 3:30 p.m. on 3rd May and left again at 4 p.m. on the 5th of May after all the pilgrims had been disinfected, arriving finally at Jeddah, where I disembarked at 8 a.m. on the 7th of May 1927. So there can be no doubt Hamilton was on that pilgrim ship to Jeddah. Okay, so what did he write about in his report? He wrote about appointment of protector of pilgrims. So Hamilton thought that there should be a department, a small department to regulate pilgrim travel and to take care of the pilgrims. He also talked about the need for vaccination for pilgrims vaccination. He talked about the condition at Kamaran Island quarantine station. He also talked about prevention of sick pilgrims from proceeding to Jeddah and to Mecca. He also talked about, if you can see here, latrine conditions, toilet conditions. He also talked about the need for sweepers to be on the ship. He also talked about bond for pilgrim ships. He also talked about duties of the ship medical officer, and he also talked about feeding of pilgrims. Now, this part is a bit interesting, and I want to read out what he wrote, what Hamilton wrote. He said, having had ample time to observe the system whereby pilgrims are allowed to provide their own food and to cook the same in small braziers all over the deck, and at all times of the day, I am more than ever convinced of the absolute necessity of their being fed in future either by the ship or by a properly instituted food contractor. So if you have grandmothers or great-grandmothers who went on their pilgrimage in the 1920s, you can imagine the kind of things they brought with them. And Hamilton mentioned this in his report. The amount, and this is what Hamilton wrote, the amount of foodstuff and pots and pans, not to mention tins of water and bags of firewood which every little party of pilgrims brings on board is simply incredible. And all this litter is either arranged around the sleeping plot of the party in the form of a barricade. So you've got your pots, your pans, your foodstuff, your firewood and whatnot as a barricade all around you. So you can imagine the condition of the pilgrims then. So these items are arranged around in the sleeping plot of the party in the form of a barricade, or is in part kept on deck where it occupies a space which should normally be available for other pilgrims. So you can imagine the condition of the pilgrim ship at that point. Okay, so he ended by saying the above recommendations are made now in the hope that some of them may be adopted before the commencement of the next pilgrimage season. And he signed off as A.W. Hamilton. So there is no doubt that Hamilton was on the pilgrim ship to Jeddah, but when I went to London in June 2019 to the School of Oriental and African Studies, where I found 2 files on Hamilton, this is what I found. One article with the title, The Meaning of the Word Haji, which was written by Haji Hamilton. Okay, and this document is important to me. What does it say here? There are 2 paragraphs, 2 segments of this document which I think are extremely important. The first one is the meaning of the word Haji. People have often asked me how I became a Haji, and the answer is simple. I never did become a Haji. So what of the book by John Slight? The compliment was thrust upon me in the first instance by well-meaning European friends as a recognition of my close association with and knowledge of Malays and their ways. The name stuck and was eventually used by other nationalities in Malaya, who would call me familiarly Tuan Haji. Later, as my silver-grey locks began to take on the appearance of age and looked not unlike the white skull cap affected by Hajis, and so named Songkok Haji, I became Pak Haji. So, this contradicts, I believe, contradicts the statement by Dr. John Slight. He assumed that Hamilton went on a Hajj, but this article written by Hamilton himself said that he never did become a Haji. And the second paragraph is even more interesting, telling. He said that I once travelled on a pilgrim ship from Singapore to Jeddah, the same pilgrim ship we talked about earlier, while proceeding on leave to England, and visited the reputed tomb of Eve, which lies near the boundary of the Forbidden Land, and this is the nearest I have ever been to Mecca. So in this article, Hamilton himself explained that no, he did not go to Mecca. He never went to Mecca. So we're back at square one. We wondered about the title Haji. Then John Slight, or Dr. John Slight, said that he converted to Islam and he performed Hajj. And then we have this document which says that no, he did not perform the Hajj. So what do we do now? So of course the first thing I did was contact Dr. John Slight and ask him about to verify the information as to whether or not Haji Hamilton performed the Hajj. And I asked him about the documents at SOAS, and surprisingly, Dr. John Slight said that he wasn't aware of those two files at SOAS. So I assumed that Hamilton did not perform the Hajj, although he did go on the pilgrim ship together with other pilgrims, but he stopped at Jeddah, and from Jeddah he went to England, right? And so we've established here that he did not perform the Hajj. But was he a Muslim? Perhaps he wasn't a Muslim because he did not perform the Hajj, but we do not know. And in February of this year, I went to the National Library of Singapore, hoping that I would be able to find some more information on Hamilton. And I was looking specifically to find documents in the 1920s which would tell us a bit more about Hamilton's first nursery rhyme. So I met Mr. Let me get out of the way. Mr. Ong Eng Chuan, who gave me, from whom I requested a document, but unfortunately there was nothing there about Hamilton. But as I was about to leave, he mentioned the name of Mr. Jeffrey Supaat, another librarian at the National Library of Singapore. And he asked me whether I would be meeting Mr. Jeffrey Supaat, and I said, well, no, because I came, I got what I want. I didn't get what I want. I didn't find what I was looking for. But no, I don't think I would be meeting up with Mr. Jeffrey Supaat. And it was then that Mr. Ong Eng Chuan mentioned that, several months ago, Hamilton's family members came to the library, and that was the first time I heard of Hamilton's family members in Singapore. So I then got in touch with Mr. Jeffrey Supaat. And by the way, if you can Google his name or go to the National Library of Singapore, and you will be able to find this video, which Mr. Jeffrey Supaat also made on Haji's Book of Nursery Rhymes. And the beginning of the video starts with him singing, so that might be a bit entertaining. Just side information for you. And so I met up with Mr. Jeffrey Supaat, who gave me some crucial information, which led me to finally meet the family of A.W. Hamilton, who is the great granddaughter of A.W. Hamilton, Miss Sarah Talib Shadlo, and Hamilton's granddaughter, Puan Sharifah Fauzia Syed Hussein Alkaf from Singapore, and they are, as I mentioned in the beginning of the talk, they are joining us. They are here today with us, joining from Singapore. So Sarah and Puan Sharifah Fauzia, we are very excited to have you with us, and we're extremely delighted that you can join us today so that we can learn more about your great-grandfather. And also, we are grateful to Hamilton's family in Singapore for their willingness to share with us personal photos, which can help unravel the mystery of Hamilton. This is the photo shared by Sarah. This is Hamilton with his wife, Malay wife, Puan Rogaya. And according to Sarah, Hamilton was a Muslim way before he married Puan Rogaya. So he did not marry and became a Muslim. He was a Muslim first, and then he married Puan Rogaya. And then from this brief union with Puan Rogaya, they have a daughter named Noor. I mentioned to Sarah many times how stunning Noor is. So this is Hamilton's daughter, Noor. And Sarah also shared with me a picture of the 1947 book, which was given as a present to Noor from Hamilton. And this book was brought, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, the book was brought back from London to Malaya in 1949. This book was published in 1947. It was brought back in 1949 as a gift to Noor, Hamilton's daughter, and it was brought back by the sister of the Sultan of Johor and given to Noor. And what is interesting is, thank you very much, Sarah, for verifying that. And what is even more interesting is the inscription in the book presented to Noor. Pemberian kepada Encik Noor, anak beranak, dengan selamatnya daripada Muhammad Zain, tahun baharu 1949. This is perhaps the only document which bears Hamilton's Malay name, Muhammad Zain. So I think this is a very important document, and again, I thank Hamilton's family in Singapore. I am truly grateful for your willingness to share such personal documents with us today. And I'm sure that many people, I find the story intriguing, and I'm sure many people likewise find the story worthy of a docudrama on TV. Terribly interesting story. Right, so we've established that Hamilton did not go on Hajj, but he definitely was a Muslim. He married a Muslim woman, Malay woman in Singapore, and and was able to write in Jawi as well. And he has the name Muhammad Zain as his Malay name. This is A.W. Hamilton. This is the picture I found at SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies in London, and that is a brief from the documents that I've been able to gather, a brief history of what Hamilton was doing. So he was born in India. Again, Sarah, thank you for giving me that information. He was born in India to parents who were in the Indian civil service. He arrived in 1908 in Singapore as a police probationer in the Straits Settlements, and then as he was about to learn Malay, he was sent to China to learn Hokkien, came back, and then spent some time in Teluk Blangah in Singapore, and then for 5 years went to Penang, which explains Penang place names in his nursery rhymes, I think. And then he was Assistant Commissioner of Police in Kedah, and you will see later how important he was in Kedah. And then in 1925, he became the director of the Political Intelligence Bureau. 1927, as the director of the Political Intelligence Bureau, he went on the pilgrimage to Jeddah. 1928, he was posted to Perak. 1929, he went back to Kedah. 1931, he went to Johor, appointed as Commissioner of Police. 1932, he retired from service and he died in Perth in Western Australia in 1967. Now, I also found this document in at SOAS. Haji Hamilton tells us how I learned to speak Malay, and he wrote there, I arrived in Singapore towards the end of 1908 as a police probationer, having travelled out from London on board the steamship Sunda, a slow but steady P&O intermediate steamer. And and it was during that voyage that he learned Malay, okay, with the help of these two books, a manual of the Malay language and Traveller's Malay Pronouncing Handbook. Sorry that the second image, the image on the right, is not very clear. So that was how he started learning Malay. And also, but the Malay studies came to an end when he arrived in Singapore, started learning Malay. He was already learning Malay when suddenly he was sent to China to learn Hokkien. And then upon returning to Singapore, I was posted to Kandang Kerbau and supplied with a Malay guru to teach me how to read and write Jawi, right? And in addition, I assume that the Malay guru taught him Malay in a more formal setting. In addition, I had the inestimable advantage of being assisted in my studies by Cik Mahmud, the Malay writer or juru tulis at police headquarters, and Cik Mahmud is the writer of Kamus Mahmudiyah, right? And also, if you are able to read here, Hamilton learned Malay by reading Hikayat Abdullah, by reading Hikayat Kamila and Damina, and reading about Cerita Abu Nawas and so on, with by Mahmud or Cik Mahmud, right? And also, if you look at the three final paragraphs here, Hamilton also learned to speak Malay by encouraging his Malay officers who were quite sedentary. They didn't want to play any games, so he encouraged them to play bulu ayam, main bulu ayam. Okay, this is near the Victoria Bridge Malay School in Singapore. So Hamilton encouraged them to main bulu ayam, and after that they had cakes and so on. So that was where he learned to speak Malay informally. It was during these informal gatherings that one learned to speak Malay familiarly and easily. And from then on, I never ceased to associate with Malays of all degrees. So that is a bit of history of how Hamilton learned to speak Malay. Right, these are the two books which Hamilton used to learn Malay. And in 1922, he wrote this article which was published in the Journal of the Straits Branch of the Royal Asiatic Society in 1922 about Penang Malay. Okay, to anyone, he wrote, to anyone whose knowledge of Malay has been acquired from the various textbooks on the subject with their correct orthography, it comes as rather a shock to find on arrival in Penang that he is unable to follow even the simplest conversation between two natives of the place, which goes to show the uniqueness of Penang Malay, which is very different, Hamilton explains, very different from Singapore Malay, which he initially learned. So Singapore Malay is very different from Penang Malay, and he went on to explain how they're different. And if you and if you remember, in his preface to the 1939 publication, he wrote, Tuan Pengarang pun boleh dikatakan anak Tanjung Teluk Belanga, because it was in Teluk Belanga, Singapore, where he first learned to speak Malay. And then the next 5 years. He also spent 5 years in Penang, where he also learned to speak Penang Malay, Malay as it is spoken in Penang, and it also helps explain, I think, the inclusion of Tamil words, Indian words, in his Orange and Lemons nursery rhyme. Okay, the word maple, the word ponu, and the word Malay, right? Right. This is what I found on Facebook. Okay, Facebook Polis Diraja Malaysia. This is I found this on the 21st of March. Oh no, this was posted on 21st of March 2015. Okay, so Hamilton, A.W. Hamilton, Penolong Pesuruhjaya Polis Kedah. Yeah. So this is on Facebook, which I found. A.W. Hamilton, Penolong Pesuruhjaya Polis Kawasan Utara Kedah in 1922. So in 1922, definitely he was in Kedah, helping the police officers there to deal with Siamese bandits who were terrorizing people in the state of Kedah at that point. And the stories of him dealing with the bandits are told in Chia Boon Keng's The Peasant Robbers of Kedah 1900 to 1929. You find descriptions of him doing all sorts of things, okay, to apprehend the bandits, especially one very popular bandit by the name of Dame Prum. Okay, and this is in this book. Chia Boon Keng mentioned that the subject of social banditry in Kedah or in Malaysia is a very recent one, and not many people wrote about social banditry in Kedah. And he said that A.W. Hamilton, the police officer there, was of a literary bent, as evident from the memos, letters, and reports that he wrote. But Hamilton did not stay very long in Kedah because of ill health. And this information, I verified this information from this report, which I found also at the National Archive, written by Hamilton. You can see his signature at the bottom. This was written in 1922, and it's addressed to the Chief Police Office in North Kedah. I have the honor to request that I may be granted a month's leave, month's vacation leave on full pay from a date early in November, for the purpose of proceeding to a hill station in India to recruit my health. So he was ill. He was carrying out duties as a police officer in Kedah in 1922, but he was quite ill at this point. Right. And then there's also this description in this book by, in a way, A.W. Hamilton. He did not stay very long in Kedah. Minatnya kepada bahasa kebudayaan Melayu amat mendalam, sehingga beliau pernah menyarungkan pakaian Melayu dan berserban masuk ke dalam Masjid Zahir bersembahyang Jumaat bersama orang-orang Melayu. Atas laporan dari Shaykhul Islam, I did a bit of research, and the Shaykhul Islam, the most senior figure where Islamic rules are concerned at this point, was a Shaykhul Islam by the name of Wan Sulaiman Wan Siddiq, and he was very, very close to Tunku Mahmud Ibni Sultan Ahmad Tajuddin, who was at that point the president of the Kedah State Council. I believe from this story, Haji Wan Sulaiman Wan Siddiq reported him going into the mosque. Why? I do not know. Maybe because Hamilton was not a Muslim yet at that point. We do not know. But it is clear that he was reported, and as a result, A.W. Hamilton was transferred to another state, which I find very, very sad. But this is a story that must be told. Yes, and then from 1922 we go on to 1925. This is also from the Singapore National Library. In 1925, he was appointed Director, Political Intelligence Bureau, Straits Settlement and the Federated Malay States. And then as we saw earlier, in 1932, he retired from service. What happened after that, I could only gather from this article by Jennifer Brewster and Anthony Reid, which was written in 1989, entitled A.W. Hamilton and the Origins of Indonesian Studies in Australia. We've got this part here. So he was in Alustar in 1930. In 1931, he was back in Singapore, and then he went to Johor. And then in 1934 to 1940, presumably unable to face retirement in Britain, he travelled to various British Commonwealth countries, so British Columbia. He went to Cape Town, to Kenya, and London. The war in Europe, and he ended the war in, and they ended the war in Europe must have convinced him that Australia was a better base from which to put his knowledge of Malay to some use. So we know now from George Crowley that Hamilton was in Australia around 1940, 1941. But what he did in Australia, I could only gather from this article by Brewster and Reid, 1989, and also from another book which I found just recently, written by Paul S. Thomas, Dr. Paul Thomas, lecturer at Monash University, who edited this book entitled Talking North, The Journey of Australia's First Asian Language. I got in touch with him, and because I was unable to get hold of the book, I got in touch with him, and I gratefully acknowledge the help of Dr. Paul Thomas, because he shared with me his chapter 2, which focused on Hamilton and how Hamilton tried to promote the Malay language in Australia. Unfortunately, he was not successful, and it was, of course, the language of choice in Australia was in Indonesia. It was not Malay. So Hamilton tried to promote the language. He tried to set up Malay studies in the studies of the Malay language in Australia, but he wasn't successful. What else do we know about his life in Australia? From these letters which I found at SOAS, he definitely wrote to Malcolm MacDonald, who was the Governor General of British Territories in Southeast Asia around 1948. So this is the letter that Malcolm MacDonald wrote to Hamilton. Notice his address. Hamilton was based in Australia at this point. This was around 1948. There was also a letter by Dato Abdul Razak bin Hussein to Hamilton. Hamilton must have gotten in touch with him for him to reply to Hamilton, who was the Minister for Education then. And there's also a letter from Tunku Abdul Rahman also to Hamilton. So he must have wrote to a number of people, giving them his books and so on. And I also found these letters. If you notice the signature at the bottom, they are all signatures of A.W. Hamilton, which Hamilton wrote to Pendeta Zaba, Zainal Abidin, a prominent Malay scholar. And in all the letters, they talked about the Malay language. They talked about how to promote the Malay language, spellings in the Malay language, and so on. So both of them were very passionate about the Malay language. And you would think that Hamilton at this point was far away from Malaya. But I found this interesting bit from his letter to Zaba, dated the 5th, this is dated the 20th of February 1956. If you can read this: Dear Zainal Abidin, many thanks for your letter of 2nd February. I am enclosing a recent snapshot of myself on the front veranda with Siti, the Persian cat. And I find this very amusing because Hamilton was very far away from where he learnt Malay, but he kept a cat with a Malay name, Siti, which I find interesting, heartwarming, amusing at the same time. Right. These are some writings by Hamilton, which are published in the Journal of the Straits branch of the Royal Asiatic Society, and also the Journal of the Malayan branch of the Royal Asiatic Society. Notice number 3 is the article on Penang Malay, which I mentioned earlier, and these are articles written by him, so you could see that he was interested in so many things. He was interested in language, he was interested in borea, he was interested in birds, he was interested in plants, he was interested in love charms, he was interested in mollusks even, and so on, right? And because perhaps of his contribution, you can also find his picture on the website of the Malaysian branch of the Royal Asiatic Society. Now, earlier we saw Hamilton's translation into Malay. Hamilton apparently also translated from Malay into English, as evident from this document which I found at SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies in London. This is O Bangau, a translation of Bangau O Bangau from a Malay rhyme sung to a well-known Ronggeng tune. So you've got Bangau O Bangau translated into English by Hamilton. So he translated from English into Malay. He also translated from Malay into English, as seen here. And he also wrote in a combination of the two, as you can see from this very amusing, interesting poem on Esah Ronggeng. So I'll read it a bit so that you can see the rhyme, the mixture of English and Malay, which comes from the hands of Hamilton. Cik Esah was a Ronggeng girl who jogged her way ke fame. Instead of to fame, is ke fame. The other term is joget, and a lebih better name. Her natal place was Kalang in Singapore, of course, Kalang, where the rokok daun was made from pandan leaves by aged crones who chuck up by the shade. A cordial chapping once sufficed to tutup modesty, for where thy treasure is konon, thy hati it will be. A virgin she, but sunti at the umur 6+10. So Esah Ronggeng was 16. Cik Esah was the cynosure of all the bujang men. So Cik Esah must have been very attractive. A pair of kerabu earrings told her anak darah state, for ini memang adat, as the orang tua relate. Her jalan was provocative, as dari hips she'd sway, like kangkung leaves near water, lenggang-lenggang, who would say, lenggang-lenggang kangkung. Her little neck was jinjang, where it met a baju thin, which shadowed forth her susu like two pinang fruit within. Her skin was putih kuning, that is white bersapu gold, like bulan purnama, her face was bulat to behold. So you can go on. I find this extremely interesting, amusing, appealing, and very hilarious, in fact. But if you get to the end, you will notice that Esah Ronggeng was finally defeated. But yes, so Hamilton translated from English into Malay, Malay into English, and he also wrote in a combination of both, as you can see in Esah Ronggeng. He also wrote the ABC of the Malayan household. So this is again another interesting poem which he wrote. A is for ayah or amah. I can't quite see this, but yeah, very interesting. The rhyme, the aspects of the Malayan household that he included is extremely interesting. He also wrote about belacan, so you can get an idea of this very interesting person who wrote about so many different things. So this was, as you can see, he signed off as Haji. And this was found also at SOAS, and this is taken from the Malay Police magazine, probably from 1940, right? Right. We've come almost the end now. It's almost 2 hours now. Hamilton died in Perth. We recorded in the obituary columns of the November issue of this journal the death in Perth, Western Australia, of A.W. Hamilton, who was one of the most colourful and distinguished of the senior officers in the Malayan police force and who made a strong impact upon all who met him and upon his surroundings from the time he first arrived out east in 1909. So this person wrote about Haji. He said, though I did not have the good fortune to serve with him, except for one splendid youthful year in Penang, we became in later years close friends. Haji had the unique gift of identifying himself with and absorbing to an extraordinary degree the characteristics of whatever the community in which he found himself, whether Malayan, Chinese or Indian. This understanding of the Oriental mind and way of life was derived perhaps from his family, which had high and distinguished connections with the old Indian civil service. Haji's closest ties were with the Malays. By 1915, though still a comparatively junior officer, he had already earned such a reputation in Malay affairs that he was sent on a special mission to Kelantan to deal with a rebellion which had broken out a few weeks after the mutiny of the 5th Light Infantry in Singapore. So that was the Tok Janggut, rebellion of Tok Janggut of 1915 in Kelantan. So people had very nice things to say about Hamilton. And because I had all the details, so one day I thought, let's try and figure out whether I would be able to find out where Hamilton is buried, where his final resting place is. So I got his name, I forgot the year he died, and with a bit of detective work, I managed to find his final resting place, which is in Perth, and we've got the registration number and registration year. And if one is interested to know about the details of Hamilton's death, you can use this information and perhaps one day go to Perth to see the final resting place of such a brilliant man with brilliant writings, brilliant translations. So, to conclude, I've thought about how his 1939 book arrived in Penang in 2018. I've talked about Hamilton's translations. I've talked about him as a person, and by now I think we all have the same idea that this is such a brilliant man. He produced brilliant translations which were adjusted to fit his target readers, and the influence of Hamilton is such that this was in 1926, his nursery rhyme was featured in Biblioasia. This is a publication of the National Library of Singapore. You can access it online if you're interested. And this article talks about English nursery rhymes with a Malay spin, Hamilton's 1939 publication, and about the unique characteristics of Hamilton's translation. Hamilton's translations were also featured in an exhibition entitled From the Steps, held by the National Library of Singapore in 2016. And he continued to exert a lot of influence, and I believe many more documents. I will try to find many more documents about Hamilton, because I think we've not, while there is a lot already that I found, there is still, I believe, a lot about his life in Australia that I've not found, and hopefully I will be able to continue researching Haji Hamilton and find out more about the life of this wonderful translator, brilliant translator. So I thank you, and before that I would like to convey my thanks to Bahagian Malaysiana and Arkib Perpustakaan Hamzah Sendut for coming up with the idea of the talk and for inviting me for the talk. I would also like to thank Perpustakaan Negara Malaysia, the National Library in Kuala Lumpur, specifically Koleksi Nadir, for giving me access to the 1947 book, Arkib Negara Malaysia Kuala Lumpur, for all the documents I found about Hamilton in Kuala Lumpur, the archives and special collections at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, the National Library Board of Singapore, especially Mr. Ong Eng Chuan and Mr. Jeffrey Supaat. I also would like to thank Ms. Sarah Shadlow and Puan Sharifah Fauzia Said Hussein Al-Kaf for their willingness to share personal family photos, private photos of the family. George and Carol Crowley, Sydney, Australia, because it was George actually who started the ball rolling. It was the note that George had in that blog post of 2014, which really started the ball rolling. I would also like to thank Dr. Aiza Maslan from the School of Humanities, Dr. Paul Thomas from Monash University, Australia, for sharing chapter 2 of his book with me, and also Vincent Wei from Singapore, who helped obtain this 1985 translation of Hamilton from Singapore. So thank you everyone for listening. I appreciate you spending 2 hours of your Tuesday afternoon listening, and I hope you find this interesting. And for those who are interested in doing a research on Hamilton, you can go to the National Library of Singapore, you can go to Perpustakaan Negara, and of course you can come to USN. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih Dr. Sina untuk siri bicara yang sangat-sangat menarik ini tentang Hamilton, sejarah hidupnya dan juga kerja-kerja terjemahannya. And now, if anyone has any questions, I'm sure that Dr. Sina would be pleased to answer them. So, anyone?
The questions I would be happy to try and answer.
Okay, for USM staff and student, we will give you the link now. Okay, you may fill in the form that provided by Puan Azlinda to obtain your CPD points. And for our public audience, you are also encouraged to fill the form so that you can have some insights for our next talk.
Questions from anyone? I would be most happy to answer. Yes, I think Dr. Lalita, I think you can unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you, Dr. Lalita. Thank you, Adila, for that very kind comment. I agree, this whole journey should be made into a movie. Thank you very much for your kind comment. Oh, the audience can hear. Unfortunately, I'm not able to hear Lalita. Oops.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Lalita. Sorry.
Oh, good. Okay. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I wonder if I could request you to share the image of that page of the book gifted to War. That page that you shared with us earlier. The gift, I think it was a birthday gift.
The one from Hamilton's family in Singapore?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Sarah, I think that should not be a problem, right? If that is shared.
Hello?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, yeah. Yes, Dr. Lalita, I will share the image with you. I will get in touch with you after this.
Actually, I was wondering if you could share it on the screen.
Okay, just a second.
I can only see the participants.
Okay, just a second. Let me search for that particular image. Oops. Just a second. I'm searching for that image now. Is this the one?
Oh yes, this one. This one. I have two questions about this page. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Lalita.
Two questions about this page. The first is, it says book, so it's a book gifted to Noor, right?
Yes.
At the bottom it says music by H.A. Courtney. What's that about? Is it a book?
Yeah. Now the 1939 book, the 1947 book, and also the 1956 book have musical notations next to some of the nursery rhymes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so there are musical arrangements for some of the nursery rhymes. I think there were, I can't quite remember how many, but yes, some of the nursery rhymes are accompanied by musical arrangements. So that is why it's written there, music by H.A. Courtney.
Okay, so that clears that up.
Yeah.
The second one is, just a little discussion with you about the title of this book, which is called Haji's Book of Malayan Nursery Rhymes. To me, it's a misnomer. It's an adaptation, a translation. It's a re-upting almost of his nursery rhymes. By saying Malayan nursery rhymes, I feel it is quite misleading. Do you have any kind of idea about why he called it Malayan nursery rhymes? And although he referred to the English titles in the contents page, the book title itself gives no indication that it is not an original Malayan nursery rhymes, but English nursery rhymes.
Yeah.
So it's a bit misleading.
Yeah. It is misleading because if you remember, if I can, just a second, stop sharing. Let me go to my slide. If you remember, when I talked about the 19... Oops. I can't seem to share this. Are you able to see this? Oh. Just a second. I'm trying to find the right slide. It's obvious that. Just a second while I find the. I can't seem to find it now. Is it this one? This one. Yeah. If you notice, from the 1923 publication right until the 1985 publication, there was no mention of the nursery rhymes being translation, it does not state specifically that these are translations. It is only when you look at the content that you know that these are translations. So in a way, I agree. It's a misnomer. It's kind of misleading, the fact that they are given the title Malayan nursery rhymes. They're actually translations of English nursery rhymes. he wrote in his preface, he did not use the word terjemahan, perhaps because the word terjemahan was not used or not popular at that point, but he did say that salinan, he used the word salinan, 100 daripada pantun itu yang selalu dipakai oleh kanak-kanak sudah diturunkan ke dalam buku ini dan diikuti oleh satu salinan. Salinan meaning translation. So we use, I think before the word terjemah became popular, the word to use for translation was salin. Disalin oleh means it was translated by someone. So it is in his preface that Hamilton explained that they are in fact translations. The other explanation could be perhaps the fact that he titled the Malay nursery rhymes is because he did a lot of adaptation. So to him, probably they were new rhymes in Malay. But of course, that is perhaps only applicable in the first publication, which was not a bilingual one. The subsequent publication, starting from 1939 publication, they were all bilingual, so people can see very clearly, despite the fact that it's not stated anywhere on the title that they are translations. You can see from the content that they are actually translations. But yes, I do agree with you that the titles are misleading. It's only when you look at the content that you know that these are in fact translations. I hope that answers your question, Nalita.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much.
Plus the talk, and it's very enlightening. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Hasrina?
Yeah.
Kak Zahra here from London.
Yes, Kak Zahra from London.
Hi. I just want to say congratulations for a very interesting presentation. I woke up, I made a mistake. Anyway, just to say and to show you how Hamilton's legacy has reached us here
in London.
My grandson received this book. He's only 6 years old. He received this book, the 1956 version, which was given to a friend, a Danish lady, Ruth Iverson, when she was in Malaya. So it was given to Ruth's son in 1966. So in 2019, Ruth decided to give this book to my grandson. So the legacy lives on. The other thing is that you know that I'm very interested in manuscripts and pantones and everything. I interviewed an English gentleman who served in Malaya in 1948 or 1947. He was also with the Malayan police. Now at that time they were fighting in the emergency, and he said he fell in love with the Malay pantun, and he was reading and learning about pantuns using Hamilton's book. And he was reading behind the sandbags, and he fell in love with the pantun so much that back in London, at any Malaysian gathering, he would read out pantuns.
Hamilton's pantun.
And during holidays, his book to read during holidays anywhere would be Hamilton's book of pantun. So there you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kak Zahra in London. Lydia, is it possible to get hold of this nursery rhyme book? I saw on Facebook like 2 days ago a copy of the 1947 book was sold for 300 ringgit. So yes, you can. If you remember my first slide, one of the earlier slides, the writer Susan Abraham, she acquired her copy, the 1956 copy from Kino in KL for 650. So yes, you can try and search for the book, although you must have deep pockets to be able to do so. Yes. Any more question?
Dr. Hasrina,
Yeah.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Dr. Tasina Radia here.
Yes, Puan Radia, yang from Kota Baru.
So we meet online
Yes.
instead of physical.
Yes.
So glad this day come to the realization. So we have planned the program since last year.
Yes.
And we organized early this year. And because of the MCO, we couldn't have it physically.
Yep.
But I guess now at the right time and the right place with the right people, at least we have few new people like Sarah and family,
Yes.
and everybody. So I'm glad that we chose you for the first speaker for Malaysiana talk series that we have planned for quite some time. So thank you, Doctor, for your work, your research, and for being here today. And make the talk a successful one. Okay, I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Puan Radia, and thank you also for always entertaining my WhatsApp messages. I know that every time I find something new, you are one of the first person I would message regarding my finding. I think you would remember one day, I think it was last year around Maghrib, when I found Hamilton's final resting place. It was Maghrib, and I text you there and then to tell you about my latest finding. And I thank you also and the rest of the Malaysiana team for always entertaining my WhatsApp messages regarding my emails with George and my meetings with Hamilton's family in Singapore and so on. So I thank you again. Thank you for organizing the whole thing and and making it a success. Thank you, Puan Radia. I appreciate your help.
Dr. Hasina, can we have a few words with Sarah and Puan Sharifah?
Yes, I'm sure they would be happy to.
And George as well.
Yes, perhaps Sarah would like to say something.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Hi, I'd like to introduce my uncle as well. So my mom's older brother. So this is Mr. Ali. Ali is my uncle. Actually, instead of being raised by my grandmother, was sent to be raised by her family in Teluk Blangah. So he was actually very close to their grandmother. So he out of all the grandchildren, he had the closest relation to A.W. Hamilton's wife, Puan Rugaya.
Right.
So yeah, so we're here today. We're just as a family, we're so thankful. And there's so many things there that got us really emotional. Thank you so much. I'm really happy. It's amazing to see how much he's appreciated by so many
He
people.
is, Sarah, he is.
It makes us feel really amazing. Thank you to everyone as well who has shown interest to come in for the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you. And Puan Sharifah, I will keep my promise. The moment everything is over, I'll take the first flight out to Singapore to see you. Inshallah. That is a promise. I will definitely go to Singapore and see you. I hope those are happy tears.
No, extremely. Extremely. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Yes.
And if anyone would like to reach out by email, please you ask Dr. Hasina for my email address, and I'll be more than willing to have a chat separately. And I'm not sure if George is here. If George is,
George?
Thank you, George.
Is George still here? Oh no, George. I can't see George anymore.
Yeah, there.
George?
Is George there? But you cannot hear the voice.
Oh. It would be good if you can hear from George as
It's
well.
on. His microphone is on, but you can't hear voice.
Right. Oh, that's quite sad.
I'll email George separately. Thank you so much, Dr.
Yes, Sarah. Thank you to the whole family too. And inshallah, I will see you soon. Let's hope COVID will be over soon, and I will go to Singapore and see you and your mom.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I think we don't have.
This is Odi.
Yes, Odi.
I wrote a note on the chat.
I'm sorry, I think I missed it.
Malay speaking community, because what you presented is not very interesting, very inspiring, very awesome. Okay. So yeah, it would be great if you can share that in Bahasa Melayu too, or perhaps either the school or the library can do just the Malay version, because I know that a number of people who can't understand English. I mean, they would learn something from this, and I think they would appreciate really what we have done just now. So
Yeah.
great in Bahasa Melayu too.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
for the next year or
Thank you for the suggestion, Dr. Radia. Inshallah, I will.
next
I
year.
should be able to
Thank you so much
consider it.
for the tips.
Right, okay. George is, I can see George there, but yeah, so,
It's not on.
yeah, it's not on. It would be good if we can get George to say something as well, but unfortunately he's yeah, we can't. Yeah. George, can you hear us? Oh, okay. Yeah.
The mic is on.
Yeah, but if there are other questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Kita sudah sampai ke penghujung bicara, dan terima kasih kepada semua peserta yang menikmati program Siri Bicara Malaysiana ini. Jika ada apa-apa penambahbaikan atau cadangan, boleh emailkan kepada bma@usm.my. Dan kami dari Perpustakaan tersebut juga mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Dr. Sina Harun kerana sudi memberi talk tentang Hamilton ini, dan kami dapat sangat banyak pengetahuan baru, dan juga dari segi insight untuk perpustakaan, kami juga mungkin boleh cari lebih banyak artikel atau buku yang berkaitan dengan translation untuk dijadikan rujukan kepada pelajar-pelajar PTIK khususnya. Sekian, terima kasih.
Okay. Terima kasih semua. Semoga kita dapat berjumpa lagi di lain masa. Terima kasih semua. Thank you Sarah and Puan Sharifah Fauzia. Thank you so much for everything, and also George as well, and everyone at the Bahagian Malaysiana. Thank you.